From the 16th century through to the 19th, Britain played a central role in the transatlantic slave trade. British ships transported more than 3 million enslaved Africans across the Atlantic, primarily to work on plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas. This brutal system of forced labor became a cornerstone of the British Empire's economic expansion, embedding itself deeply within the social, political, and financial fabric of the nation. The wealth generated from slavery touched every tier of British society, from merchants and financiers to politicians and aristocrats. It financed opulent estates, underpinned burgeoning industries, and helped fund institutions that still exist today. The formal abolition of slavery in the British Empire came with the 1833 Slavery Abolition Act, but this legislation was structured in a way that prioritized the economic interests of slave owners rather than the freedom and welfare of the enslaved. The British government agreed to compensate slave owners for their loss of property with a staggering £20 million payout, equivalent to around 16 to 17 billion pounds today. Notably, the formerly enslaved received nothing. The fact that this payment represented approximately 40% of the government's annual budget underscores just how integral slavery was to the British establishment. Among those who benefited most from this system were a number of elite families whose fortunes were built on the backs of enslaved labourers. Sir John Gladstone, father of four-time Prime Minister William Ewart Gladstone, was the largest individual recipient of compensation. He owned more than 2,500 enslaved people across 9 plantations in the Caribbean and received over £106,000 in 1830s currency, a sum worth tens of millions today. This wealth enabled the political rise of his son and helped secure the family's position within the British elite. James Blair, another prominent figure, received over £83,000 for more than 1,500 enslaved people in British Guiana. His wealth, like that of many others, was amassed while residing in Britain, demonstrating the reach and normalization of absentee slave ownership among the upper classes. Judah Mordecai Cohen, one of the largest Jewish slave owners in Britain, held over 1,200 enslaved people in Jamaica and received nearly £24,000 in compensation. These figures illustrate how slave ownership cut across religious and ethnic lines within the elite, united by the common pursuit of profit. Benjamin Buck Green represents the intersection of slavery and British finance. Having inherited extensive plantation interests in the Caribbean, Green leveraged his slave-derived wealth into a career that culminated in his appointment as Governor of the Bank of England in the 19th century. It was not until 2020 that the bank publicly acknowledged and apologized for its historical ties to slavery, a gesture that honestly underscores the long-standing institutional complicity. Similarly, the Drax family has come under renewed scrutiny for its early and sustained involvement in the Caribbean slave economy. So, starting with James Drax in the 17th century, the family established one of the very first sugar plantations in Barbados, and, well, they profited immensely from it. Even today, the Drax estate in Dorset and the family's political presence remain intact. It stands as a living testament, really, to the enduring legacy of wealth built on slavery. The entanglement of the British elite with slavery, went far beyond just individual fortunes. Many members of Parliament were themselves slave owners or had close economic ties to the colonial economy. Legislation was, more often than not, passed to protect the interests of these individuals, and the political machinery of the empire was, in effect, geared toward maintaining and profiting from the plantation system. Cultural institutions, from museums and libraries to universities, were funded by donations derived from slave-based profits. Even the art, architecture, and literature of the time reflect the influence of colonial wealth. This legacy is still visible in contemporary Britain. Many of the great estates, charitable foundations, and political dynasties have their origins in slavery. Public school endowments, university benefactors, and even royal investments were linked to this exploitative system. The inequality entrenched during the colonial period has never been fully addressed, and descendants of both enslavers and the enslaved continue to grapple with its implications. So, in recent years, efforts have been made to reckon with this history. Institutions such as the National Trust have actually begun to acknowledge the colonial origins of many of the properties under their care. And, descendants of slave-owning families, including BBC journalist Laura Trevelyan, have offered apologies and financial reparations. Countries like Barbados are seeking formal reparations from British families and institutions that profited from slavery. Yet these gestures, while significant, are only the beginning of a broader societal confrontation with Britain's imperial past. Understanding the extent to which slavery shaped modern Britain is essential not only for historical accuracy, but for the pursuit of justice. The British Empire's wealth and global dominance were underwritten by human suffering on a massive scale. Acknowledging this fact does not diminish the country's achievements, but it adds necessary complexity to the national narrative. Only by fully confronting this history can Britain hope to address the deep and enduring inequalities it has inherited from the age of slavery. If you are interested in this content and discovering the truth about Britain's past, please like and subscribe to my channel.